And welcome to Lower Makefield Board of Supervisors. This is interviews for boards and commissions prior to the beginning of the public meeting. Our first interviewee is Kellie Frain for Human Relations Commission. And Supervisor Blundy, would you like to start with questions?
Sure, although I want to say that I had the opportunity to speak to Kellie recently, and I'm going to speak for her for a little bit because I'm always so happy when someone from the township comes back to the township. So Kellie's a recent grad with an advanced degree and has expressed to me her interest in not only giving back to the township, but specifically in public health and issues of equity, which is something that's difficult for me to talk about without starting to get a little teary-eyed, so I'm going to try to move this along. Kellie, can you tell us a little bit about the work you did while in school and why you're interested specifically in the issues that this commission hopes to address?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm a recent Master's of Public Administration grad, concentration in healthcare administration up in Brooklyn, New York, Long Island University. During my time in grad school, I worked for a local nonprofit organization that gave back to the community members of Brooklyn, the largest borough in New York City. And I also worked in the patient relations office in a local hospital. And what we did was we advocated for the people of Brooklyn in the community and also the patients of the hospital. And what I learned during that time is that there's so many people who have different challenges, and there's so much inequity, I guess I should say, in that community. So now coming back from here and seeing what it's like on the big scale, I'm kind of eager to take that experience that I've had in New York and bring it back into my community where I was born and raised, and where I have a solid footing here now, living here.
And Kellie, we should add in that you are a Pennsbury grad and perhaps a D1 athlete?
Yes, perhaps.
Thank you for that. She did that all while going to school, so dare you to ask her a question, folks, dare you.
Supervisor Ross.
Well, with that, I don't have any questions, but thank you very much for applying.
Thank you for having me.
Supervisor McCartney.
I don't have anything to add at this point.
Supervisor
I want to thank
Grenier?
you for coming out.
Thank
now
you.
I have to ask you a question if nobody else.
Of course.
So we heard a little bit about yourself. How do you think you would interact in a committee of this type, given what the charter is? What skill sets do you think you would bring to this, and how would you like to use those to
Absolutely.
add to
So I was reading over the ordinance, and the issues with the commission are discrimination-based, and there's a huge emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. During my time in grad school, I was assisting in the nonprofit Brooklyn Community Services and opening their own DEI committee within their internal team. I was working alongside a consultant and the chief human resource officer to kind of launch the DEI committee within their team. And I would say that I have some sort of grasp on these types of issues, but I would like to kind of broaden that understanding with the community and give back as best as I can.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kellie. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for coming by.
All right.
Is Ms. Tara Friedman here?
Thank you.
So good evening. Thank you so much for coming out today, Ms. Friedman. I appreciate it. Since I didn't ask questions the last time, I'll ask questions this time. What motivated you to apply for the position?
So I am a hospice and palliative medicine physician by profession. I'm the chief medical officer of the largest not-for-profit hospice in the country, and I've spent my whole professional life working with people and at the worst times of their life, at the end of their lives, and their families. And I know from, I don't want to date myself, but 25 years as a physician in this specialty, how important it is that we meet each individual as an individual, not even as part of a cultural group with assumptions about what it means to be part of any particular cultural group. So I carry that interest in diversity and cultural stewardship as a professional, as a member of the community. I came here, born and raised outside of New York City, and came here 24 years ago. I have 2 children, 20 and 17. My 20-year-old is non-binary, and as the parent of children who are of the COVID teenage years, I think my awareness was heightened significantly by how my child has been treated, referred to, et cetera, not just in our community, but in life. And so it has been brought home to me in that way. So I think both personally and professionally, I feel very connected to the mission of the commission,
Thank you very much for that. I do appreciate 25 years of service in palliative care. That is amazing in terms of,
Thank you.
And a very, very special skill set. So thank you very much. Supervisor McCartney?
I have no questions at this time. I just want to thank you for putting your name in the hat.
Thank you.
Supervisor Grenier?
I'll ask you a similar question to what I asked the last person in terms of your skill sets and how you could see applying those to the commission, whether it's professional, obviously professional skill sets, but other skill sets you may have, and how you could see that adding to the commission.
Yeah, so I really hope, whether I'm on the commission or not, I hope that the commission is diverse in and of itself. I think that different voices bring different ears and hear things and perceive things very differently. So I think that I could add a little diversity, perhaps. White woman, but Jewish, and I have a non-binary child, so maybe that helps in some way. I also have served as a volunteer to my professional association for almost my whole career, 10 years on the executive board of directors of the American Academy of Hospice and Palliative Medicine, and served as treasurer and then president of that. So I have many, too many experiences working on committees, and I think my experience in making sure that every voice is heard on the committee and that people have a chance to talk about things that may be difficult in a way that everyone can be comfortable is something that I experience both one-on-one with my patients and also on these committees. So I think I would bring that to it.
Appreciate that.
Supervisor Ross?
I have no questions, but thank you very much for applying.
Thank you.
Supervisor Blendy?
I also had a 20-year-old who went through, as I say, puberty in her bedroom. And I think that while COVID brought so many challenges to all of us, it's particularly difficult to see, how that generation has had to migrate through it. So I feel like we might share a lot on our resumes. Not that I'm fortunate enough to be a physician, but I was down in Tampa recently because I work with Johns Hopkins and was at their hospital down there. It's a beautiful healthcare community.
Yeah, I'm there a lot, unfortunately.
It's a nice airport.
It is.
So I think it's, what you said is true, right? We're looking for people who can listen and can help bring those different voices to the table, and it's a challenge. So in your experience on palliative care, I assume you're on the committee that talks about end-of-life decisions and helping, especially those who may not have support?
Yeah, it's a great question. I appreciate it. I mean, I think complex family decision-making is the bread and butter of palliative medicine. So I started my career here, fellowship at Penn, and worked. My first job, if you have my resume, was locally with a hospice here, and kind of grew up through patient care into administration, management, executive management. So you know how that goes. You get further away from the bedside, but the core skills are all about listening, digesting, and translating, because the language that our providers speak isn't necessarily the language of an average citizen of whatever background. So learning to listen, digest, and give back in a way that people can understand the information is really important. And so, yes, it starts with understanding what someone's goals are, and then understanding as a professional, or whatever the commission would be, to try to, whatever the goal was for that particular situation, be to try to represent that and find common ground in both things can be true, but you have to create reasonable goals for the situation that you have. So yeah, we spend a lot of time doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thanks. Is Mr. Byron Fiman here? Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening. I'll ask the first question to make it easy for you. What motivated you to come today to apply for the position?
Sure. I grew up in an environment that was, everyone looked like me, and I went to a college that was all white. And it wasn't until I was at Walter Reed as a captain that I realized that people I had experience with all kinds of different people, and I was appalled at the inequities that I saw, even though I think the military was probably the very best institution in the country in managing these issues. But I developed an assessment tool called the Racial Perceptions Inventory, which we gave to 20,000 people across the world, just to really illustrate the differences in how people saw how treatment was done. And it was the basis for the Defense Race Relations Institute that got built up. So that's why I still see the military is really the best organization. I was the director of a mental health center in Virginia, and we won some awards because we tried to make our staff look like the people in the community, which was difficult, but very, very critical, and developed some ways of providing treatment that was available for all kinds of people, that met their kinds of goals and needs. A couple of years ago, after George Floyd was murdered, colleagues and I, we all developed a race relations book club, and we read every book we could find for 3 years. And there's lots of solutions out there, but we were so frustrated because very few of them are being implemented. And so I was looking for an opportunity to do something about that, and I found out about this organization, what you're trying to do, so that's why I've applied today.
Thank you very much. Supervisor Blondie?
I don't have anything to add, but thank you for your service. I'm in awe every time we ask for volunteers, the skill set that we have in the township. And while this is new to us, meaning the commission is new to us, we have people who have spent their careers in addressing these really difficult issues. I'm in awe, so thank you.
Supervisor Ross?
I have no questions, but thank you very much for applying.
Supervisor Garnier?
I think you've already answered my question just in your introduction, so I don't know that I have any questions for you tonight. But again, thank you, and echoing Supervisor Blondie's sentiments about.
Well, the question I thought you might ask was the one you've asked the other applicants.
Well, that's what
about skill
yes.
sets.
Yeah.
Because after all of that, I was a clinician for a while. I had a radio show in Washington, D.C. for a while. But there were many changes in mental health that kind of got me to think differently about how I could make a difference. And so started with some colleagues, a change management consulting firm. So I think the skill is, I've worked with organizations around the world around change, about how to manage a different way of operating. So I think I have some skills to understand that process pretty well, and hopefully accelerate the kinds of solutions that are out there. We're just not doing them.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Supervisor McCartney?
I don't have anything to add, but thank you so much for applying. We're blessed to have somebody like you in our audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thanks. You're free to go. What channel were you on in D.C.?
WPGC.
Okay, yep.
Rock and roll station.
Yep, I know WPGC, yeah.
The first time I did it, I was so scared. And the DJs weren't very helpful. They said, don't be worried, there's only a million people.
Oh, you're not close enough to the mic.
Okay. Well, they said, don't worry, because there are only 1 million people listening to it.
Thank you, Byron Crane. No, sorry. Sorry.
Thanks. All right,
Crane joke.
with that, I'm going to end the interview portion and call to order the public meeting part, and we'll begin with a Pledge of Allegiance. pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll begin the roll call. Supervisor McCartney?
Present.
Supervisor Grenier?
Here?
Supervisor Ross?
Here?
Supervisor Blendy?
Here.
Excellent. We have all 5 in attendance, so quorum is met. And we'll move on to agenda item 4, community announcements. And reminder at this time, if you have announcements, if you have a youth organization or an event, please contact the township at admin@lmt to request a special announcement to be added to the agenda. And I'm going to start with one I received in a letter. For those wondering what they're going to be doing on October 26th, the 11th annual Slay Sarcoma 5K Walk Run will be held at Core Creek Park in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. That's a great time. It's going to be beautiful. I don't know the weather on October 26th, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be good. You're going to want to be there. Again, it's the Slay Sarcoma Research Initiative. It's their annual 5K walk run to be held at Core Creek Park in Langhorne. It's to raise awareness and research funding for, holy cow, I don't know how to pronounce, leiomyosarcoma. And for the doctors, I hope I was close on that. There's probably going to be about 500 race participants. You're going to want to get there early so that you can definitely want to be at the starting line on that one. Now, if you have free time on the weekends and you're not going to the Slay Sarcoma event on the 24th, believe it or not, you can volunteer your time and join the Friends of 5 Mile Woods cleanup days. They're held the second Saturday of the month, which means it won't conflict with the other event. So you can be there starting at 8:30 a.m. If you've got comfortable shoes, you don't mind getting dirty, bring along some work gloves, and you can help with cleanup, trail lining, and pruning, and boardwalk repair. So lots of fun. If you've got questions about that, reach out to Monica Tierney. You can email her at monicat@lmt.org. At this time, we'll move on to agenda item 5. That's
John,
public.
can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to the Pennsbury Athletic Association, PAA, U12, who also, I don't really speak baseball, but apparently there's the Cal Ripken League and then there's a Little League, but our group of young men made it to the World Series. In that particular competition, they actually have teams from Korea and other international venues. They did not make it to the finals, but I think they had a 3-1 record, so great job, guys. Yay, baseball. Not my sport. Thank you.
Okay. I'm in favor of baseball too, so yeah. Congratulations to the PAA, the 12U team. Move on to agenda item 5. That's public comment on non-agenda items. At this time, if you could come up, line up to the microphone, please state your name and whether or not you're a resident of Lower Makefield Township.
Lee Padowitz, resident of Lower Makefield Township. I live at 247 Truman Way in Yardley. Good evening, Chair Lewis, supervisors, Mr. Kratzer, Chief Galuzzi, and all other Lower Makefield Township officials. At the August 7, 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting, I commented that the design and construction of the Regency at Yardley development was designed and approved, not complying with Township Ordinance 17838K1 and the 2000 International Fire Code, both in effect at the time of its design and construction. For over 10 years, the residents of the Villas section of the Regency development lived with no fire department apparatus access through the Renaissance Boulevard entrance because of the gate installations, which includes their islands, an obvious serious safety concern, and an obvious violation of ordinance and fire code. It was proven that fire apparatus could not enter the Regency at Yardley development from the Renaissance Boulevard entrance because of these gate installations and their islands. I had requested letters from the township explaining why this serious condition was approved and explain how all the gate installations meet the requirements of Township Ordinance 17838K1 and the 2000 International Fire Code to meet this approval. This past Monday, I emailed Mr. Kratzer about my request, and he replied that a letter Township Solicitor Maureen Burke Carlton sent me July 31st, 2024, is the only letter that I would be receiving. The letter does not address the information I requested at the August 7th meeting. The letter keeps referring to the Lower Makefield Subdivision and Land Development Process Ordinance, SALDO, as having been vigorously reviewed and that the Toll Brothers application withstood that examination. I repeat my request for a written explanation as to how the plan could have gone through the SALDO process and been approved, a plan that did not allow fire department vehicle access. If the development was designed according to ordinance and standard, there would be no gates and their necessary islands. Ordinance 178-38K1 states, private streets will be approved only if designed to meet township construction standards and if there is safe and convenient access for emergency vehicles. I've driven fire apparatus and ambulances as a volunteer fireman and EMT, and if someone asked me what entrance would provide more convenient access for emergency vehicles, one with gates or one without gates, I think the answer is obvious. With that in mind, what is the intent of Ordinance 178K.1? I want to note that the gates have never been operational and were not operational when the fire department vehicles were brought over. The carriage house part of the development, which is off Big Oak Road, has the obstructing islands in place, but not the gate mechanisms. Having the fire vehicle enter without the gates in service is not a true test of convenient access. I had a similar concern when I was told the fire department truck could enter at Renaissance Boulevard, and when a truck came over, it couldn't enter. I have been keeping the residents of the Regency informed about this matter and will continue to do so. Thank you. And I request that a copy of my prepared remarks be attached to the minutes.
I think we've got everything, but sure.
Okay, I can send them to you electronically, but I have them written.
You mean what
for
you
here.
just read?
Yes.
Well, it's all, it's part of the record. It's all being
I
transcribed.
would really like to have it attached to the minutes.
It's not something we normally do.
Pardon. What
Sorry.
we can do is, you can share those. The recording secretary reviews every word that's said and develops the official minutes. So those will be included in the minutes, as will my response to your remarks. Just for example, the stuff that you had mentioned with respect to the Renaissance entrance in terms of the islands, those were addressed and fixed as you had requested, and then we're done. And as it relates to the other entrance that you had spoken about at the last meeting, we demonstrated the largest fire apparatus entering quickly to be able to get access to that. Additionally, that particular facility has more entrances than is required by law. The reason why we did not follow up with an additional letter for you is because that costs taxpayers money. And so as a consequence, and that particular land use decision was involved in litigation, which means that potentially we would have to reach out to prior counsel, litigant applicants, or litigants in that as well, and that's cost taxpayers money. So that's why there was no compelling need for that.
Well, with all due respect, Mr. Chair, the ordinances in place when the Regency at Yardley was developed were that 178-38K1, which is still in effect. It was never amended, and that went into service in 1997, if I'm not mistaken, and also the 2000 IFC Fire Code. And the 2000 IFC Fire Code mandates that the width of a fire department access road's got to be at least 20 feet. It doesn't mention gates and the entrances to the Yardley. And if you just practically, I know there are other entrances like emergency entrances, so you run whatever that development is on Big Oak Road. Okay, so you ride through that neighborhood to get into my neighborhood. The unnecessary delay is just unacceptable. And with all due respect, if I can get a good reason why the design was approved through the SALDO process, and I can get a good explanation why these gates and their islands do not have to conform to 2000 IFC, the International Fire Code, I'll be I won't say I'll be happy, but it would give me something to evaluate, because as it stands now, this is a direct,
Mr.
an obvious
Pedowitz, would you be
violation.
willing to pay the cost to generate that letter?
Well, I'm a resident, a tax-paying resident of Lower Makefield Township, and that is up to the Board of Supervisors in the township. I think I'm bringing up a legitimate concern, and the responsibility falls on you.
Respectfully, Mr. Pedowitz, we did in fact demonstrate with video the ability to enter in the one entrance that you had concerns with.
With all due respect, again, Mr. Chairman, the ordinance that I'm concerned about is 178-38K1, which says convenient access, and I mentioned that in my letter. It's certainly not convenient for a fire truck to have to go up to a gated installation, maybe wait for the gates to open, maybe not open, before proceeding. And if I may finish, if the plans were approved as per saldo, because there were no waivers, there wouldn't be any gates, and you and I and everybody else wouldn't be having this conversation tonight.
This seems to be a question of your interpretation of the word convenience, and I'd like to remind you that I'm not an attorney, and as such, I would have to rely on other folks to provide a legal rendering of the definition of convenience, and I would say to you that getting that opinion costs taxpayers money. And so when you first brought up your concerns about safety, job one, right? So we made sure that, for example, we addressed the islands issue. Then we also made sure to validate so that you could see that we could enter the second entrance. We're more than willing to do those kinds of things, and you may be aware that when there was an issue with mold at Regency, right, the township spent over $30,000 because Toll Brothers wouldn't solve the problem. And we cared enough, not because law required us to, but we cared about that community to make sure that we got a fix for it. So we're willing to invest to ensure the safety of folks. However, I don't think I have 3 board members here that would want us to spend money to go back and review that process that predates all of us.
I respect your opinion, but, you know, you're responsible for this. I mean, as the board, this is a violation of an ordinance, several township ordinances, and that's why I'm addressing you. Convenience, I know it's, well, convenience, everybody can have a definition of convenience. But one thing that I brought up in my letter, when they brought the fire apparatus in, the gates were not operational. And over in the carriage houses, the gate installations are not there, just the obstructing islands. And I'm using the word obstructing because if you look at the 2000 International Fire Code, it says major fire department access roads will have no obstructions, be 20 feet, at least, I think 20 feet 6 inches wide with no obstructions. The gates are an obstruction. And I would like to know why the Toll Brothers permit or application went through this extensive saldo process and nobody picked up that you couldn't get a fire truck in on Renaissance Boulevard.
Are you asking me a question?
Well, it's just a general statement.
Okay, one which I think the board has worked that you couldn't enter through Renaissance. We did fix the island, and we've tested the other islands, and there's a third entrance that's not required. So I have a hard time addressing your concerns. If you want to go back and relitigate that decision, a decision actually that was the subject of litigation, there are other parties involved. This predates all of us. You're welcome, for example, you retain all legal rights. If you wanted to seek injunctive relief somehow, you could certainly do that. I'm not advocating for that. I think you should give us a little bit of props for being willing to address your concerns in an honest, open manner and do safety analysis, right? Because we do care. Where I think, Mr. Pedowitz, this is where we've kind of validated stuff. And that might not be what your preference is. However, the HOA didn't have an issue with the work that we did in that space.
Chair Lewis, I respect everything you say. I still am not going to deviate from my position, and perhaps you should ask the town engineer what he or she would do if she was looking at a plan and it was an obvious violation of the codes that were codes and ordinances that were in effect at that time. Thank you for your time.
Is there any other public comment at this time? And I'm not seeing anyone on the phone, so I think we can move on to agenda item 6. This is the consent agenda items, and these are largely non-controversial items. However, if a member of the board has a concern with any of the items in this agenda, in this consent agenda, they can be removed for additional review. If any of the audience members has a concern with anything, they can certainly bring that up at this time. Is there any concerns with any of the consent agenda items?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, it's been properly seconded. Is there any comments on the consent agenda? I'm not seeing any in the audience. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the consent agenda as described signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect that the vote was 5-0. We're going to move on to agenda item 7, community development, discussion regarding Tree City USA designation. Good evening. Can you introduce yourself?
I assume this is working.
Yes.
My name is Jim Bray. I'm a resident of Lower Makefield Township, and I am the current chair of the Environmental Commission in Lower Makefield Township.
And with you?
I'm Soumya Dharmavaram, also a resident of Lower Makefield Township and a member of the EAC.
Thanks so much. Jim, do you have formal remarks? It looks like we have a PowerPoint.
I do, yes, and it's really a short presentation. The EAC always labors under the impression that short and concise is better than long and rambling, okay? So anyway, I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for the invitation tonight.
The PowerPoint's not appearing yet. Okay.
I want to thank the Board of Supervisors for inviting us this evening for the presentation on Tree City USA. Before I begin, though, I want to talk briefly about why we actually are here today. And that goes back to a conversation early in the year I had with Chairman Dave Kratzer. Now, I'm going to be quoting Dave, but before I quote Dave, I always ask Dave, and Dave agrees, because the last thing in the world I want to do is quote somebody in public, and they don't appreciate it. But anyway, in the conversation that we had earlier in the year, David mentioned to me that, you know, Lower Makefield Township does this incredible job of planting trees, but why aren't we a member of Tree City USA? And you know, that set me back for a second. I started thinking about it, and we were so busy over the years developing programs and planting trees and things like that, that the recognition angle kind of escaped us. And quite frankly, that's a real important angle, I think, because it gives the community pride in, you know, what's actually happening in the community. So, what I actually did, I went back and we talked to the members of the EAC, and we gave a project to Soumya Dharmavana, who is sitting on my right, to analyze all the various municipal tree programs that are out there. And she, in fact, did do that, and then brought the analysis back to the EAC. After the EAC took a look at these various programs, we came to the conclusion that by and far, the Tree City USA program was superior and outshone all the others. It's literally the poster child of the municipal tree programs in the United States. All right, next slide, please, Dave. All right, I'm just going to talk briefly about the history of the Tree City organization. It's kind of interesting. It goes back to 1872 in Nebraska when a journalist named J. Morton Sterling, who was a lover of trees, decided to talk to the Board of Agriculture, and he actually convinced them to plant 1 million trees over the years in Nebraska. And it wasn't until almost 100 years later in 1976 where the Arbor Day Foundation was formalized and in fact became a national holiday. And this holiday actually takes place in the last Friday of April. However, that's as far as the national observance is concerned. As far as the state observance is concerned, a state can hold it basically any day that it wants. Now, Pennsylvania does adhere to the national day, but various communities throughout Pennsylvania and through the United States can actually select whatever date that they feel is appropriate for Arbor Day. Next slide, please. Now, we feel the program has a great deal of value. Now, I'm not going to belabor the point of how important trees are to a community because 2 weeks ago, the board passed our 2024 long-range master tree plan. And during that meeting, we extolled the benefits of what trees actually, can do and, for a community as far as the environmental benefits, aesthetic benefits, etc. Now, one of the things I also noticed, if you walk downtown Yardley, or like I was on a bike trip this afternoon in Lambertville, and one of the things that I noticed is that what really, really makes a town special are the trees that are actually growing there. And I've seen other articles that show a picture of a downtown Main Street with and without street trees. And the contrast is absolutely striking. I mean, there's just no comparison at all. In addition, 100 mature trees can catch over 200,000 gallons of water a year, which is an amazing statistic. But what's even better than that is that if you have a heavy rainfall and you have a mature tree can actually absorb over 400 gallons of water a day, which is, absolutely amazing. Next slide, please. Now, to talk about the Tree City program itself, and the Tree City program is literally a program, the main arm of the Arbor Day Foundation. Launched in 1976, and as of today, there are 163 million people that are covered by Tree City USA membership. And this actually equates to 3,600 communities. Dave, can you
move forward a
please?
few slides? There you go.
Okay,
One more.
There we go. And next slide, please.
Two more, or one more?
Yeah, one more, please.
There we go.
All right, there we go. Now, there's an update to those statistics. Instead of 135 million people, it's actually 163 million people now. And that's about half the population of the United States, which is pretty amazing. And instead of 3,400 communities, we have 3,600 communities now. Next slide, please. All right. Now, as far as the benefits of the program are concerned, basically, the Tree City organization is a badge of honor for the community. It's recognition that we don't really have before. What it tells you is that this community is a green community and it cares about its citizens and it cares about the community. It cares about the environment. And there's literally, as far as, we've taken a look at, I don't really think there's a downside to this program. When you look at it, it's pretty much all upside. Next slide, please. All right, as far as publicity is concerned, on a yearly basis, if we decide to be a member, what actually can happen on Arbor Day, we can actually have a representative like the local forester come out or what have you, and actually, present the proclamation that's read, and also, discuss some of the long-term benefits of being a Tree City, USA. Next slide, please. All right, next slide. Now, to become a Tree City is a relatively easy process. There's actually 4 standards that a community has to meet. The first one is a tree board or department. Now, this doesn't have to be a formal organization per se. We have, for instance, a public works department that maintains and takes care of trees. We also have an EAC that has worked religiously with the board and with the administration over many, many years as far as tree maintenance and tree planting is concerned. And in talking to the Pennsylvania State Forester, she said the important thing is to highlight the role of the EAC because they're basically a de facto tree board. The second one is a tree care ordinance. Now, we've taken a good look at our Saldo ordinance, and we have extensive areas that deal with tree maintenance, tree coverage, tree planting, tree protection standards. There's about 5 different references in the various ordinance, so that should, certainly suffice for that standard. The third one is a community forest program with annual budget of at least $2 per capita. We are very, very fortunate in Lower Makefield Township because we have a tree bank ordinance. And right now, we have over $350,000 in the tree bank. In addition, if we've spent money over the years to take care of a tree because of extensive damage or whatever the regular R&M is that's used by our Public Works Department, that also counts as far as the standards are concerned. The last one is the only one that we haven't taken care of yet. And any municipal body that's looking for membership in the Tree City organization will not have done that step. And that step actually would take place later on in the year. And what it is essentially is the signing and reading of a proclamation for Arbor Day and holding also a brief ceremony. So, and talking to, Dave Kratzer, our township manager again, what I had suggested, if the board sees, fit to pass this request, is that we're going to have 2 extensive tree plantings this fall, one at the golf course and one at Macclesfield. Together, it's going to be roughly about 110 trees that are planted. So our plan is that at some time during that planning, Supervisor, Chairman Lewis or Chairman Manager Kratzer or people from the EAC or the administration, they go out, we read the proclamation, we take some publicity photos, we get some good publicity from the press, and that's basically all we need. Now, that's as far as the first year is concerned. As far as the second year is concerned, we would envision something a little more grand. The suggestion that we had is that you select a specific organization or figure out a class of students in Pennsbury that for some reason has performed some really beneficial work as far as the environment or what else. And then you have the class go out and we plant a tree in honor of Arbor Day and the commemorative plaque that we set up, for the organization or the children. And then, of course, we read a proclamation. And we, of course, have, good publicity as far as that's concerned. The whole idea behind Tree City is community involvement. And now, next slide, please. So, what we have to do in order to become a Tree City, we meet the 4 standards. We've already met the first.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone?
Sure. We've already met the first 3 standards, and the 4th, as I said, is pretty easy to accomplish. Now, the reason that we're here today and not sooner is that the application process starts on September 1st and it ends on December 31st. So that gives us, I think, plenty of time, to get the application in order. And then when the application is completed, and I talked to Manager Dave Kratzer about the application, and it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's really not all that complicated. So once that's done, we submit it, and then Arbor Day holds all the applications, and then early in 2025, they release all the applications and, approve the various applications. And by the time Arbor Day gets it, because the State Forester looked at it first, by the time Arbor Day Foundation gets it, it's basically pro forma. I mean, it's a done deal. And then they will mail us the completed application, the approved application. I think that's basically about it. What I will now do is open, the arena for any questions that the board or the general public might have.
Before that, we should probably have a motion. Is there a motion? This would be to apply for Tree
So it would
City.
be authorization to submit an application for consideration as a Tree City.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I have a question.
Well, if there's a second, then you can ask the question. If not, we're done.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Yeah. I have a few questions as well, but feel free to.
Okay, Supervisor
My
Ross.
question says it requires an annual budget of at least $2 per capita. With our population, that would be close to $70,000 a year. We'd have to fund this. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so again, if you look at the component parts of what constitutes qualifying expenses, and Derek can speak to this, but from a tree care and maintenance perspective, we well exceed that amount already with current expenses, just given the extent of trees that are on public property and the maintenance activity that goes into maintaining those trees. Is that? Do you want to comment on that, to provide, no?
Let the record reflect that Department Chair Derek nodded affirmingly.
My question, assuming you always get into the weeds of this stuff, no pun intended. Other than what we already have set up as a township, and I think, Jim, you spoke to this, but is there anything other, we have the EAC, we have the Public Works Department, we have the funding going forward, we have all of our ordinances, we don't have the resolution or whatever we need to do for an Arbor Day proclamation yet. That's fairly simple. Is it really just, in order to be part of this, to be a Tree City USA, is it really just filling out? Are we to the point where the only effort the township has to make in this case is to fill out the paperwork and submit an application, or are there other, is there anything else that we need to do or consider as a township to meet the requirements, I guess?
No, I believe that sums it, except that it is, the whole purpose is to get the community involved with trees and tree planting. It is supposed to, I think the whole idea is advocacy apart from endorsement of what we are already doing. So like Jim suggested, and we have already done in the past with Monica's help, some sort of volunteer activity organized maybe once a year to that extent to make sure. I don't think there is any specification on what type of volunteer activity. It doesn't have to be tree planting, but it has to do with the community getting involved and being aware that trees are important. And so to whatever extent an event can be organized to get the community involved through Monica's, I guess, her fantastic sign of genius method, which works, is enough.
Yeah. So I think, not to put words or thoughts in other supervisors' heads, but the concern with things like this is always, is it going to cost us additional time, money, resources, et cetera, to be part of one of even these nice programs? It doesn't sound like there is additional resources that need to be spent to be part of this, but there's obviously a benefit to it, and recognition and future programs we can use. So I think that's always the first question we have to ask as a board.
Is there a benefit to it?
So that's a great, and there's two types of benefit, right? There's an obvious benefit where we get a certification, I think like Sustainable PA was one we got, where that opens us up to additional funding for different things and whatnot.
So if we're a tree city,
Yeah.
we'd be available for funding.
That's that's
Right.
the question.
There's also significant grants that are available under the Arbor Day Foundation that are available to Tree City members.
the
And
benefit.
also, when I was biking the other day, Newtown, Yardley, Pennington, Hamilton, Frenchtown, Salisbury are all Tree Cities. And when I go by a sign like that and I see Tree City or like Birdtown, it conjures up to me a real positive image for that community, that this community is a green community, it cares about its people, it cares about the environment. And I think just that itself is really priceless.
Yeah, that's a long bike ride. But I kid. But no, I think the added benefit of Arbor Day offering grants and other awards to Tree Cities we could potentially benefit monetarily for other projects moving forward, which we're always looking to do, in addition to having that nice plaque. There's more to it.
Oh, you get a flag too, I forgot about that.
okay.
And there's no fees at all, so you
Yeah.
get either a 3x5 or a 4x6 flag that we can fly. And I've actually seen it in other communities, it's pretty neat looking. It's below the American flag
Of
and
course.
it's pretty nice.
Yeah, I'm not sure about how, what kind of paperwork is required to document the 2% commitment, but that might be something that the township has to prepare. I assume there would be some sort of record to be submitted.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we can absolutely
Sure, we have
support
lots
that
of
again.
receipts.
Yeah.
Just on the maintenance side of things, we're well in excess of the threshold that's noted as part of the program.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Would you like to be recognized, Supervisor Blondie? Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I don't think we can talk about trees without simultaneously talking about the sad email we all received. Linda, thank you for all that you've done for our township as a member of the EAC. I know you really helped spearhead with Sumya the volunteer plantings we did. Your work was invaluable, and I see it every day when I drive around the township, so thank you, and good luck to your daughter, who will be playing, say it with me, folks, D1 lacrosse at Siena College, so another Pennsbury grad who's going on to pursue her education and play in collegiate sports, so yay, I hope you enjoy the next 4 years. They go by in an instant. So that's my thank you to the EAC for that. I'm excited that they're grants. I think that maybe next time we lead with the grants, because I was like, okay, we're getting a poster, which, posters are nice, but maybe we actually have to buy the poster. I'm a little bit confused on that. I do really want to see volunteer projects, and that Monica can do a Sign Up Genius, but Monica can't do the plantings, can't lay out those ideas, and we really need the EAC to push on that.
Right.
And so, as I gave you the heads up a minute before the meeting started, Jim, I'm going to pivot to another subject. We had asked the EAC to look into the single hauler issue for sanitation. Any movement on that? I know that we just learned that
No,
Whitetail is
we
selling.
just discussed this a short time ago, and there's a very checkered history in Lower Makefield Township about single trash hauler that maybe I could talk just briefly about.
No, I think we're all aware of it, but I think that's why we asked you to revisit it now, because we're hearing from residents that they're interested in understanding if there's something we can do so that we don't have the parade of 5 garbage companies. And it may all be handled by osmosis, if you will, because, more and more haulers are leaving the industry. But, we had tasked the EAC to give us some feedback on this, so we look forward to hearing what your suggestions are, and not
Yes,
what the history
I would
was.
say probably in a month or so that we will have some information, and there's a lot of different ways of looking at this, so. And what we also want to do, we want to check some of our local communities, because even back 10 years ago, when we looked into this, and, you know, we were accused of destroying freedom and democracy and all this other stuff, over 50% of the municipalities in Bucks County are actually serviced by a single trash hauler. So this is not rocket science stuff.
Thank you.
With that, we'll call the question. I don't see any public comment, so.
I actually have some questions.
Sure.
So what we're voting on is to apply to be Tree City, which requires $2 per capita. Is that a new tax, or is that existing out of the general fund?
No, it's existing expenses that are being incurred as we,
Okay.
you know.
Did we,
year over year.
is there any opportunity for us to look at that ordinance, the tree bank ordinance that we currently have, and leverage some of those funds to maybe offset some of the,
They all count.
okay.
And as I mentioned, James, we have $350,000 in that account right now.
James, are you referencing what you brought up, I think at the last meeting, where you were looking for language change in the tree bank ordinance so that the tree bank money could specifically be used for maintenance of existing trees?
Correct.
Okay.
So this is part of that, or this is not part of that?
This is separate.
Okay. So what you're saying is we're looking to now $2 per capita, basically take an additional $2 per capita out of some kind of expense, or where's this $2 coming from?
So Derek, can you come up here for a moment? Just. Already spending it. Just to, I guess if you could provide some just context on the extent of money that's spent on an annual basis to maintain trees on public property in Lower Makefield.
Is this on?
Between
No. Hello?
Park and Rec Department and the Public Works Department.
I think it's on, sounds like it's on. Tap it.
Is that better? There we
Yeah,
go.
absolutely.
So Supervisor McCartney, I guess let me, just the way I understand it is just proof that the township spends at least $70,000 on trees as a whole, whether it's maintenance, planting, anything of that capacity. For example, we typically spend, probably Public Works and Parks and Rec, we probably spend close to $150,000 a year in tree maintenance, taking limbs, diseased trees down, things like that. So we're already spending close to $150,000 a year in tree maintenance. If we do tree plantings a year, that would count towards it. So you have $350,000 just in new trees, and we're already spending $150,000 a year as a township on tree maintenance. So we surpass the quote-unquote capita needs of being part of the foundation.
Yeah, so just to provide some context on that, so if you look at the application, the component parts that go towards that at least $2 per capita, again, Derek just clearly said that just from a tree maintenance / removal and management perspective, we're already spending $150,000. But the component parts can be tree planting and initial care, tree maintenance, tree removal, management, any utility line clearance, volunteer time. So again, that goes back to the engagement of volunteers. You can quantify the cost associated with that effort. That could be a sort of an in-kind contribution in order to meet the obligations. And then there's just another component. But again, just on the reoccurring annual expense that's being spent, we're
already there.
We're well
there.
over that. Yeah.
So this would be for a community that's not spending at least X
Correct,
amount of dollars
correct.
for them to pass
So
this
again, that's
application.
part of
Okay.
sort of the conversation that Jim and I had, yes, badges are nice, or ribbons are nice, or certifications are nice, but, you know, this community clearly has made a commitment to trees, both in terms of the installation of trees, codifying requirements as it relates to trees. This is just an opportunity to be recognized for the commitments that have already been made, and that are being made year over year as it relates to trees and the importance of trees in our community.
Perfect. That was all I had.
To complete, another thing is that before the application, an Arbor Day has to be selected and instituted officially. The proclamation has to be done in order to apply. So that is something that needs to be done in the next few months.
And I already addressed that as well. They do have sample proclamations where you essentially fill in the title and the dates. And I read the one that actually is offered by Arbor Day, and it's actually superb. It's really, really first rate.
Someone fire up ChatGPT.
With, Not seeing any public comment or additional comment online, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect that the motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Sumia and Jim. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and just one further comment. I think over the last 20 years or so, we've done some remarkable things in this township from an environmental viewpoint, and that's based on teamwork. It's based on the Board of Supervisors, it's based on the administration, and it's based on the Environmental Commission. Essentially, what's been happening is we're all on the same train, going to the same place at the same time, and that's what makes things work. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Moving on to agenda item 8, engineers report, general project updates. Isaac?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow supervisors. Since last meeting, we wanted to just provide some updates on some of the ongoing projects we have in the township and be happy to answer any questions following that. The first update for the Highland Drive drainage project, we had mentioned last meeting that the permitting with DEP had been completed. The GP3, which is the stream bank work, was updated a bit after a site meeting we had with the property owner at 1 Highland Drive, which is where that upstream comes into the culvert. We had a follow-up meeting with him on August 5th, and we're looking to have that updated plan of that embankment just verified and confirmed with DEP. So that's the last piece of the permitting side. With that completion of the permitting, we'd provide an updated just drainage project schedule across the board. We're hoping to have that in the next few days. It's taken them about as long to respond to the updated plan as it did for all 5 permits when we sent them in originally. So looking to have that soon and provide that update. For the ongoing road program, it's moving along fairly well. They have completed the paving in the Penn Valley.
Isaac, can we handle one question on the?
Oh, sure thing.
Yeah.
Just before it gets away from us.
Yeah.
With the GP3 is what we're looking for the embankment.
Correct.
So that was submitted, then issued. We went back to the DEP with a revised design. Are we waiting to, typically when that happens, a modification of the permit's required, right? We don't know, is it fair to say that we don't know yet if they're going to require modification or not?
They confirmed that all they really needed was the updated plan for that stretch of embankment. So being that it's not a retaining structure, it's over 6 feet, it's not obstructing the width of the stream that's really coming down into the culvert. The permitting that they issued is still valid. It's just a matter of what they have on file as the plan for the GP3. They need to just concur that what we're providing as the update is fine to have as that latest plan.
So from a permitting language perspective, that would be more of a minor or administrative modification versus a major modification, which would require a new permit fee and.
Correct, yeah, that's what they
Review
told
and
us when we provided what they asked for the updates.
But they haven't stamped that's the case just yet.
That's
We're
correct.
waiting. Okay.
Yep.
So there could be some additional time, maybe an additional fee, the $250 fee.
If we're following what they've told us to date, then there would not be, but we're looking for that final confirmation. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Hopping back to the road program that's ongoing, so the ramp work started on the 13th of August. They are looking to complete that probably within about the next week and change. They will start milling and then paving those roads that had the ramp work completed, and the contractor says they're still on target to complete their work prior to the start of the school year. So we'll continue to provide any updates, but definitely the ramp work will be completed, and the milling, they'll be right on the heels there to complete that. With that work that they will be doing for milling and paving, there are 2 locations that date back to the 2022 road program that were observed that need to be addressed. And being that is still the same contractor that we had back in 2022, they're looking to address those 2 areas as they're completing the work for this year as well. I'll hop to the Woodside Road Bike Path Project. The utility work, as we expected, takes, the pace of the utility companies here. The Comcast relocation work to the new poles is about complete. They ran into a bit of delay at the Crestview intersection that just is taking them a little longer. So they're looking to complete their work by next week, which would allow Verizon to complete their relocation and remove the old poles. The contractor submitted pricing for the items that remain to finish up the project. We're reviewing those, and we're hoping to have something to provide to the board for the next meeting in 2 weeks. Moving down the road there a bit, for the trail connection that would connect to the Joint Toll Bridge Commission Trail, we have a meeting with staff coming up next week on the 27th. Purpose for that is really just to have some final coordination before we would have the working meeting with PennDOT, which we'd look to do in September. So at the end of the day, that's the permitting that would be gone through, and that working meeting would basically act as a pre-application meeting for that permitting to be submitted. And finally, moving down Taylorsville from there, while the grant application is being reviewed, we haven't heard anything from DCED for their timeline quite yet, but the preliminary design plan set would be progressed, and we'll look to have that pretty far along and ready as the next phase of the project would come about this fall. Final thing I wanted to mention since last meeting, the basketball courts at Memorial Park, that was construction that was in progress when we last had a meeting. They completed the paving, and as Mr. Fuller mentioned, there's a 30-day kind of rest period for the paving before they would do the surfacing and the striping and get that wrapped up. So that's currently where that court is as we wait the 30 days. Those are the updates we have since last meeting for the ongoing projects. Any questions, be happy to answer.
Thank you. Doesn't appear there are any questions. Moving on to the manager's report, agenda item 9A.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The first item is an item that you had previously seen. This has to do with advertisement of an ordinance amending the requirements in the zoning ordinance relating to wireless facilities. If you recall, at that meeting that action was taken, we had a citizen, Ms. Sue Fawcett, who addressed the board, and she conducted a thorough review of the ordinance, again, based on her professional background. We provided those comments to the Cohen Law Group where appropriate based on Pennsylvania statute and existing relevant case law. Cohen did incorporate some changes into the ordinance. So the ordinance was never advertised, given the fact that review was ongoing. Now that the ordinance is in its final form, we're just seeking reauthorization to advertise. Again, there was no cost associated or cost incurred because we were going through that process. This is just, again, reaffirming the intent to advertise the ordinance for consideration.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Okay, excellent. Now that there's a motion on the floor, and one quick comment, and that is that folks who do come up for public comment do actually have the ability to help provide updates and changes into actual legislation, which becomes a township ordinance. So in many ways, that's a good thing.
Absolutely.
That we bring people in on that, especially if they have special skill sets. So are there any other comments or questions by board members before we call the question? I'm sure that everyone's committed these 70-plus pages to memory, so on that note, I'll call the question. All those in favor of authorizing advertisement of an ordinance amending the requirements in the zoning ordinance related to wireless facilities signify by saying aye. Aye. Let the record reflect that the 5 supervisors voted 5-0. Agenda item 9B.
Yes, the next item, as the board is aware and the public may be aware, the township has an existing responsible contractors ordinance that governs contracting We, as staff, took a look at that. Again, it's been some time, and there are various model responsible contractor ordinances that are out there and that are essentially pointed to as the standard as it relates to best practice. We conducted a review of our existing ordinance against the model RCO ordinance that was adopted by the Borough of Westchester and Chester County. And there are a series of sort of differences, if you will, between what's currently legislated in Lower Makefield Township and what is put forth as a best practice relating to these issues. And so there was a memo in your packet highlighting some of those differences. And again, we're bringing this to the board's attention to see if there's any interest in perhaps revisiting the existing RCO in Lower Makefield Township to incorporate some of these best practices, again, that are contained within a model ordinance that's sort of broadly shared within the municipal sphere. So I can go through those if you'd like, or I could open it up for the board at this point, just in terms of whether there's any desire to look at this, but happy to do whatever the chair of the board directs regarding the memo.
I think this is sort of the initial discussion to see if there's appetite. I know occasionally we go into certain ordinances. This one is one that we had previously talked about in the past. I know, I think Supervisor McCartney, you had asked about this a couple of years ago, and it never had gotten further. So my initial suggestion is that, in a month or so, or whenever the drafting updates, it would become a discussion, or you would have the language to review and discuss whether you wanted to advertise that language. But today, this is sort of the initial discussion. If there's concerns in terms of prioritization or things like that, this would be the best time to have that discussion. Or if you wanted to go into the details, that's certainly an option as well. But if you'd like to take the time, mull it over, and wait, either say, hey, I want X, Y, and Z included in the drafting, that's fine. You can certainly bring that up, or wait till we have an initial draft and work off of that. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. This is early, very, very early in the process on that. Any comments or questions? Supervisor Blendy?
Yeah, I support, I love the idea that we're looking what other townships are doing to make sure we're doing what's appropriate. I do support changing the threshold amounts. I think they're artificially low in today's environment. And then I'm sure that as a board, we can come to an understanding of what that should be.
Yeah, and I think that's generally consistent even with, and I don't want to speak for the solicitor, but some of the other challenges that local communities have faced is the thresholds are low. There is some enhancement of the standards and the obligations that are being placed on contractors under the model versus what exists currently. And so that's sort of the balancing act, is making sure that that monetary threshold is appropriate, where that there's a higher standard that's being imposed upon respondents to public bids, but at the same time making sure that you have respondents and at least more than one respondent that you can ensure that you get competitive pricing as you're going out for public projects. And I don't, Maureen, I don't know if you have anything to.
No, I concur. I think the ordinance as presently written really hamstrings the township. And it, by reevaluating the thresholds involved, it really opens up the door for projects to be done and get done appropriately.
I think I concur with what Supervisor Blundy said over there. In addition,
It must be your new shirt. I mean,
What's that?
it must be your new shirt. You're so
It's
agreeable.
actually not new, I just never wear it here.
I like it.
Well,
It's very
I
nice.
appreciate that.
It does a similar color, yeah.
But there are two bullets in the memo that I think are very important that come down to safety and quality, where we're talking about 10 or 30-hour OSHA training for two trainings. I don't know that we need 40-hour in addition to that. That's hazmat, but I have those trainings, and if I have them, then I think any of these skilled labor folks should probably have them as well, just because. And then I think the apprenticeship program also so the first one is safety, and the second one's quality, where you have an apprenticeship program to ensure that all the laborers are having appropriate training along the way for large projects especially. So I think it's very important to incorporate all those items. Everything else, I think, is more about thresholds and timeframes for the most part, which we can look at and see what works. But I think it's important to focus on the safety and quality aspects too.
And I'm not seeing any other comments, so if you want to continue on, well, if it's okay with the board, we're going to continue with the drafting process
Okay.
on that, yeah?
Sounds good. Well, thank you for the direction. So the next item is just a couple of general updates, some that are noted in parentheses on the agenda. Just so the board is aware, also members of the public are aware, we are, Mr. Luber, who was serving as our chief financial officer, has accepted a position in Delaware County as a municipal manager. So we are back to market, if you will, as it relates to the chief financial officer's position. The position is advertised. Applications are due September the 13th at 4 p.m. Again, the information has been posted on our website, as well as there's been direct outreach to folks operating in sort of the public finance space, as well as all applicants that previously applied for the position have been notified that the position is available again. So that has been sent directly to them in the event that they want to place an application in for reconsideration. The next item, again, is a follow-up to the action that was authorized by the Board of Supervisors, a request for proposals for managed IT services. That has been issued at this point, and those responses to that RFP are due on September the 27th, also at 4 p.m. We have a number of folks that have expressed an interest in providing this service to the township, and we're working cooperatively as staff and to schedule sort of on-site visits for potential respondents to see sort of what the existing infrastructure looks like and what the extent and sort of scope of services that we need. So that is out. And then finally, just wanted to make mention that efforts related to Patterson Farm and implementation of the master plan that was adopted by the Board of Supervisors continues. We've made some good progress in terms of community conversations, looking for additional sort of champions. And so part of that sort of engagement process or implementation process is we have a meeting scheduled with Steve Santicero, our state senator, to sort of brief him on the master planning effort as well as the implementation efforts to date. And then also going to be discussing a funding opportunity that's available called the Statewide Local Share Grant, which again is a non-matching grant that I think the maximum amount is $1 million that's able to be requested through that funding source. So again, trying to engage with our legislative community as well as just sort of the public at large. But we have some sort of positive first steps that are setting us up for successful implementation. So just wanted to make mention of that. Happy to answer any other questions that the Board of Supervisors may have regarding anything that either I mentioned now or we've discussed in the past.
Is that the CFO or Finance Director position being advertised on the ICMA website or through ICMA?
It's not through ICMA at this point. It's through Pennsylvania, so the Government Finance Officers Association for PA, and then also through the local, I'll say, suburban Philadelphia consortiums as well. So, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Chester County, and then again, there was direct outreach to, I think, approximately 60 individuals that work in sort of the public finance space and in various capacities. And then again, the outreach back to those that expressed an interest previously.
Is there any chance we can add some external resources for that position as well?
Yeah.
Like normal, like corporate type LinkedIn or Yeah, I don't know, one of the other job
So
sites.
there are multiple.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the big one.
Full disclosure and discussions with that company, so I can't speak to them and any of that stuff. But yes, in addition, there are a number of job aggregator boards that automatically pick up jobs like this. So if you're searching for them, and that's really kind of what Indeed does. There are other ones that focus on different stuff. This would actually qualify for the ladders, which is for people who make over 6 figures. So those are potential ones as well to add in, but there's fees associated with them as some of the ones that you're.
Yeah, I mean, we can absolutely, we did, you know, I did not put it on LinkedIn yet, but it was on LinkedIn previously. You know, Indeed is a mixed bag, to be honest with you. You're going to end up getting, you know, 7,000 applicants.
We love Indeed.
I'm sorry, Indeed is a wonderful job site.
Thank you.
No, it is a useful tool. I shouldn't discount that. So that is true. But yes, we can look at broadening that as well to make sure we're touching.
Cool, thanks.
You know, various populations, if you will, and constituencies. So
Thanks.
Any other questions before we move on? No public comment, no callers. Moving on to agenda item 10. Is there any items for agenda item 10?
So Isaac spoke a little bit about the, you know, the basketball court. Derek's going to come up as part of section 11 of the agenda. I don't know if he has any additional updates as it relates to the work that's being done there. And then Derek is working cooperatively also with Monica on the rubberized surface project that you had previously authorized. So I don't know, maybe if you wanted to touch on those just briefly, that may be beneficial.
Sure. I just want to correct one thing, and just the courts, the base pavement was done on the court, so they'll have wearing course done, should be hopefully by the end of this week, just to make that clear for the basketball courts at Memorial Park. As for the rubberized surface, I know Monica had a conversation with the contractor. I think they're on board for around October to do the rubberized surface. We're looking internally to do some redo the fence while we're there before the courts and things like that. So it makes sense just to button that whole operation up, and so the park is done and we don't have to touch that for quite a few years. That's all I am aware of at this time in terms of Parks and Recreation.
On that, we'll move to agenda item 11, Public Works.
Before the supervisors this evening is the consideration of approval of the proposal from Landis Bonfido Mechanical Group for $40,000. They're a CoStar's contractor, and that is for a replacement of an HVAC unit for this building here that services the detectives area and also the tax collector's office. This is an emergency repair. This is a non-budget expense. The unit went down probably in May or June in terms of air conditioning. It was only running on one of the 2 stages of air conditioning, so it was struggling to keep those sections of the building cold. We had some temporary AC units in there. Everyone was working together and understanding of the situation. I appreciate the detectives. It was a little uncomfortable in there sometimes. They were very understanding, and also with the tax collector too. They all understood the situation. So we had we had 2 contractors come in. Landis Group, as obviously I gave my recommendations to the board in the package, but they're well versed of what needs to be done in there, and hopefully they get us up and running properly and last for a long time.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments or discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The motion passed 5-0.
Thanks, Supervisors.
I don't know if you have anything else. I should have put general updates under his section as well. I don't know if there's anything else that you have to share at this point. Not to prolong the meeting, Mr. Chair.
No,
just to
I'm good.
On that, we'll move on to section 12, Solicitor's Report, agenda item A.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your packet is a ordinance amending the requirements of the zoning ordinance related to zoning hearing board notice and uses by special exception and conditional use within the office research district. This was properly advertised and properly before you this evening for a vote.
So moved.
Second.
I'm not seeing any comments or discussion, and for those wondering why these move, it's because we've had discussion on this and went back to the Planning Commission, and So it's in pretty good shape. With that, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect 5-0. B?
Likewise, in B, there is in your packet an ordinance amending the regulations in the zoning ordinance governing the placement of and setbacks related to accessory buildings and structures. This, too, was properly advertised, properly before you this evening for a vote. It has been discussed and vetted at the Planning Commission and before you in previous meetings.
So moved.
Second?
Any comments, questions, public comment? I'm not seeing any. And one more additional item, these were all vetted, obviously, by Bucks County Planning Commission, who reviewed them prior to sending them back to us. So that's why we're at the end of the process here. All those in favor of approving an ordinance amending the regulations, the zoning ordinance, placement and setbacks of accessory buildings and structures, signify by saying aye. Aye. Let the record reflect that it was a 5-0 vote. Moving on to agenda item 12C.
This is a proposal to prepare an ordinance related to demolition for historic resources. Our office has been drafting this probably for the past month. We have it in draft form, and I use draft in quotation marks. It's in, there's a lot involved. It touches many different areas of your ordinances. I think right now we've identified at least 5 sections in which it would be affected. So you don't have anything in your packets this evening. Hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have a draft before you. But like the sign ordinance, which I'll just segue into D, general updates, it was a task. And it is a lot of work that went into it, and I think it will require a lot of discussion for future meetings. So again, we hope to have something in your packets by beginning of September.
Supervisor Griner, you have?
So this is just an update that you're working on it, we're not really providing feedback at the moment, is that a fair statement?
That is correct.
Or
But
are you
if you
requesting
if you have anything that you would like for us to include, we have received dribs and drabs of feedback from, I think,
Yeah,
That came from a
I
resident?
chair of the Historical Commission. So again, just to give you some idea of as at least as it relates to residential structures, the sort of magnitude of where resources potentially fall from a date range perspective. So he wanted to make sure you have that, because I think one of the sort of fundamental decisions is sort of applicability and sort of the thresholds related to applicability in terms of what structures are governed by the provisions of an ordinance like this, so.
Right.
I touch this field in my day-to-day. Oftentimes when the very first threshold to determine if something's historic is if it's 50 years old or greater.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a large percentage of homes and structures, not just homes, in the township, including my own, that are older than 50 years. No historic significance to that, not even me living there has no, makes it even less, But no, so I think it's important, I like the idea of this ordinance. I think it's important to, when we, residents who have much older homes that could be historically significant in some way, that they understand what we don't put too much on their shoulders so that they can live in their home and do what they wish with it. So I think it's, there are criteria, A, B, C, and D specifically, in the National Historic Preservation Act for determining whether or not a home or a structure is historically significant. Many homes and structures are already on the Historic Register, National Register. Many others have been studied because of federal projects and other projects that have been deemed eligible for listing but have not applied for it. And I think those are the types of structures that we would consider. Many others might be old enough but are deemed ineligible for some reason for the Historic Register, and forcing or making our residents go through the process to further study something that's been determined to be ineligible or hasn't been studied previously can be quite onerous and expensive for them to hire someone who qualifies as a Section 106 cultural resources consultant that can. So we want to balance that
Yeah.
so that we can protect historic resources, but not put too much on our residents relative to proving anything in either direction.
And that's been the general sort of,
Yeah.
I think, approach of the Historical Commission as well. I think the email outlines some potential approaches. Again, it's not a prohibition on demolition. It's requiring, whether it be photo documentation, whether it be potential reuse of materials, those kinds of things. But as I outlined in sort of the email that was included in or forwarded after to provide again some context on the discussion. The sort of impetus for this initially was, and there was a presentation or slide presentation that the Historical Commission had used to talk about this issue themselves. There's a bullet, for example, in 1798, Lower Makefield had 137 dwellings. As of December of 2023, only 31 of those dwellings remained. So again, you're talking about a relatively small number. Of those structures that would fall in that sort of age range, a demolition permit was approved or proposed for 5 of these permits in the last 3 years. So we really have no local sort of standards governing the demolition of these structures. So this is just providing some, not a prohibition, but some standards around that issue. And so there is ways to sort of limit applicability that beyond just the typical or easy approach of anything over 50 years, because that would be a significant number of structures that would be impacted at that point. So.
Yeah, I think, as you said, it's all balance. It's just you want to balance the incorporating those that should be protected, but not encompassing too much, that it just becomes too restrictive on the property owners. So, yeah, as I said, it's something that we're taking, really word by word, line by line, and trying to incorporate, do what we should to keep everything in balance. So again, it will engender a lot of conversation, just like the sign ordinance. So speaking of the sign ordinance, if anybody has had the opportunity to review it and has any comments, please feel free to pass those along to me. It may serve well to start maybe additional edits to the edits that we've already made, or just as for discussion points moving forward. And then finally, the only other thing for general updates is with reference to the open space referendum. As I mentioned last meeting, I believe it's incumbent upon you as a board to decide how you want to present the open space referendum to the residents of Lower Makefield. There are a couple of ways to do it, and we're happy to discuss them. I think options, right off the top of my head, are to do just a blurb on the website. You can do that. You can do FAQs on your website. You can do community or open session meetings with the residents. So there are a number of ways that you can discuss this and sort of get the word out that the referendum will be on the ballot in November. We are fine with where we presently stand with referendum. It's been to the Bucks County Board of Electors. It's been approved by them. So they have really nothing more that they need to do. It will require advertising. We'll do the advertisements in the end of September, October. So we have plenty of time to do that as well.
Yeah, so I know Lori's going to ask, because she inquired about that on the website. It is going to be placed on the website. The reason for the delay there is we were working through essentially the language of the advertisement, and as part of the advertisement, there's essentially, there's the sort of technical language, but then there's a sort of plain language sort of statement, and so we were working through that to make sure that there was clarity in that. Now that that has been done, that'll be placed on the agenda, or I'm sorry, on the website. It'll also be pushed out on our social media channels as well. And then we are also looking at some relatively low-cost tools that may be available to do sort of video-based FAQ responses. So I'm talking to a company, for example, right now that's called Rept, that is sort of a video messaging platform that would integrate with another tool that we use, Zen City, to be able to provide sort of short informational videos. They're offering essentially a pilot program, if you will, that they would offer. It would be a couple $1,000s of cost. It would interface with Zen City, so to the extent that there's chatter about this issue online, it would capture some of that. But it would be a relatively low-cost tool that could be used to answer questions that the community may have relative to it without without necessarily, some of the perils of a public session that people start interpreting things as advocacy and so forth. So we are looking at other tools as well, as just a note there.
Would you need a motion for that at this time, or would you want to wait till the next meeting?
I probably would wait till the next meeting on that
Okay.
one.
One thing that we had discussions with Solicitor Carlton was about the role of supervisors in this, and whether we're allowed to speak as advocates or opponents of the ordinance. And your advice was that we should not.
That is correct. You should remain neutral. It's not a political issue, so to speak, so it really should remain neutral. In fact, if you have these public sessions, we would suggest that you refrain from attending, if you want to attend, from speaking. It should be run by the staff.
You're telling me there's a meeting I can skip? I'm all up in that.
I'm advising you to, yes. Yes.
Along those lines, how about our advisory boards and commissions? I'm anticipating some members of certain boards being advocates, sorry, I'll get closer to my lung mic. I saw the light blinking. I'm just wondering if there's any guidance we need to give to our volunteers relative to how they participate in these conversations as well.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head as far as the representing a committee at one of these meetings. I would probably lean on the side of they should not, just like the supervisors should not. Again, this is supposed to be sort of a net neutral presentation, as more factual-based or fact-based presentation. And I would, again, I would refrain from having the committees participate with a certain stance.
Gotcha.
Either for or against.
Okay, appreciate that.
Okay. And I'd like to say I should have opened with that the minutes should reflect that the supervisors present this evening did meet in executive session immediately prior to this meeting to discuss, a litigation matter, an employment matter, and a real estate matter. Thank you.
Thanks. Moving on to supervisors' reports, I will go first. The Planning Commission met last week where we discussed the sign ordinance in some detail and talked a lot about sort of what was drafted, what the aims are, what we should be approaching in terms of what we'd like to do with the sign ordinance. There's going to be some more discussions about that, so if that's something you're concerned about or want to be a part of, you're welcome to attend Planning Commission meetings, or obviously they're streamed live. I know Supervisor Bundy said I'm not in the mic enough, although when I looked at it on YouTube, I was fine, so it could be different streaming service for audio, so we need to check that. That's all I really had for supervisor report. Supervisor Grenier?
I have no reports this evening.
Supervisor Ross?
No reports?
Supervisor Blundy?
Yes, just a quick update. You'll remember a few months ago, we had asked people to consider following the Slate Hill Cemetery on Instagram. There were a number of things they were working on, and one of the measures was how much public engagement there was for different projects. And when I say they, I mean the Historic Commission. So good news, they did in fact get 2 awards, and they're going to be holding a celebration of that on September 14th, and sure we can add this to upcoming agendas, but just so that you can save the date, little confusing messaging. I'm going to say get there at 4:30 because that's when the gelato truck will roll up. But the award ceremony starts at 5, and I hope to see many of you there.
Supervisor McCartney?
Nothing to add?
Is there any other business? Not hearing any on number 15. We're accepting the resignation from the Historical Commission of Mr. Christopher Greeley. I don't think we have any appointments at this time for the board. But that being said, if you are interested in joining the Historical Commission, there's now an opening. So please, please apply through admin@lmt.org. With that, moving on to agenda item 16. This is additional public comment on non-agenda items if we haven't covered it. So if you're online, we're not getting a lot of callers these days. I think, summertime, people aren't watching the TV like they are normally. So I don't see any public comment, and we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is adjournment, and the meeting's now adjourned.